Well, this is just an excerpt from the end of the excerpt, which is the end of the book, which is well worth reading because it's one of those few times that Darwin really sort of kind of cuts loose, philosophically speaking. He's usually very careful, be a scientist rather than a philosopher. But at the end, he expresses some really interesting ideas about the upshot of the theory of evolution applied to human beings. This excerpt comes right after he's dismissed the idea that a belief in God is a natural aspect, being a human being. Religion is not rooted in our nature, it seems to be saying. But this really could apply to everything that he said about human beings up to this point. He says, I am aware that the conclusions arrived at in this work will be denounced by some as highly irreligious. I mean, he anticipated that. Applying the ideas of evolution and natural selection to human beings would offend a lot of people, especially on religious grounds. But he who denounces them is bound to show why it is more irreligious to explain the origin of man as a distinct species by descent from some lower form through the laws of variation and natural selection than to explain the birth of the individual through the laws of ordinary reproduction. You and I have a biological origin as individuals. Our species has a biological origin as a species. The birth both of the species and of the individual are equally parts of that grand sequence of events which our minds refuse to accept as the result of blind chance. Here's where things get really philosophical. Basically saying, I know that saying that human beings evolved by means of natural selection is just basically saying that the existence of the human species is just an accident. But we refuse to accept that, right? Even he refuses, perhaps at this point in his life, to accept that. The understanding revolts at such a conclusion, whether or not we are able to believe that every slight variation of structure, the union of each pair in marriage, the dissemination of each seed, and other such events, have all been ordained for some special purpose. I mean, here he's dealing with the idea of implications, the upshot of the theory of evolution. And the theory is, I think the upshot is, the clear implication is, whether he wants to accept it or not, is that we are just here. We're not here for any purpose. The human species is just a result of natural forces. It just happened to work out that way, that nature would produce something like us. Just like each of us as individuals, it just happened to work out that we were the individuals that were born. And there is no inherent purpose to an individual life that's sort of built into them. There's no inherent purpose to the human species. I think those are clear implications of the theory of evolution. And, it doesn't mean that life is meaningless. It means that we have to find our own meaning. We have to find, just as an individual has to create their own meaning, the species itself has to find its own meaning. It's not going to be built in from nature. So it's a really interesting way of ending, because it's almost as if Darwin hesitates to accept the clear philosophical implications of his own theory. It's fascinating, really.